Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
I'm Hannah Elliott.
And I'm Matt Miller. This is Hot Pursuit. Coming up today, it is a special episode that we have been teasing for weeks.
We've heard you.
We have heard, we got the emails, everyone agrees we need to do a very special Porsche special, and we have I think, two of the best guests we could possibly have found.
Yeah, we have someone who's close to me, Magnus Walker. I happen to be married to him, that's the disclaimer.
And I happen to be a lifelong fan, well, at least for over a decade, been watching Magnus's content and listening to what he says. And I have recently discovered a Porsche expert, Nathan Merz, who owns a dealership and is also the chair of appraisals. Is that right? Appraisal chair at the Porsche Club of America.
That's fairly close. Valuations and appraisals, absolutely.
Valuations and appraisals. So Nathan Merz, a lot of people, you are going to know him from YouTube. And Magnus Walker, we talk about you, Magnus, every day, probably.
Much appreciated.
Or every week that we record this. And what I wanted to do, and Hannah, you tell me what you wanted to do also, but what I wanted to do is just get the take of these two guys who know Porsche 911s inside and out and have been buying and selling and working on and modifying and driving, most importantly, these cars for decades. I wanted to get their take on whether or not I should buy a classic air-cooled Porsche, if so, which one, or if I should just get one of the new ones, try and find it with three pedals, obviously. But what was your thought?
My thought was finally we can get to the bottom of this, because we've all been listening to you, Matt, go on and on and on about like 997.1 versus .2. And like finally we can have some clarity. And I think with this panel of guests, we might get a bit of a point counterpoint, because it seems like from what you've told me about Nathan, he comes from, and Nathan, obviously you can speak for yourself, but might come from a different side of the spectrum in the Porsche world. So I'm very curious to hear voices from all sides, shall we say, to help Matt really in your quest.
It'll be interesting to see which side of the spectrums they come from. I don't know how that's going to work out, but Magnus, I think everyone knows who you are and what you do and how you've become you, but I could be wrong. So do you have a short little origin story?
Sure. I got short versions. Short version, I'm just a man with a beard. I'm a Porsche enthusiast. I'm not a specialist at all. I like to drive. I like to build. I like to collect. I like variety of cars. I fell in love with Porsche when I was 10 years old, and that was back in the 70s, and wrote a letter to Porsche and said I wanted to design cars for them. And they wrote me a letter back, and here I am almost 50 years later, still in love with the brand Porsche and the Porsche experience and cars in general, and the whole community. I joke that we all speak Porsche. It is a language that brings like-minded car enthusiasts together, and that's kind of what I'm passionate about, really.
I feel like you guys are actually on the same side of the street here, except for Nathan. By the way, could you tell us, Nathan, your origin story? Because you have been trading Porsches, I gather, for a long time, and you, I think, own a dealership, plus you do these YouTube Porsche expertise videos. So how do you get into it, and what's your deal?
Yeah, probably like a lot of car people, I just popped out just with a passion for cars for whatever reason. I kind of joke that it was probably a good thing they didn't have a Asperger's diagnosis when I was a kid in the 70s, because I was that kid who was just super obsessed with Porsche, and I was the little kid who just wanted to talk to anyone who had a car, and I could tell them every detail about their car. I read every magazine I could get my hands on, every book I could get my hands on, and just was always around cars. Cars were kind of my thing. And so I bought my first Volkswagen when I was 13 years old and kind of figured out how to work on that, how to make money selling that. I basically buy them out of the classifieds, out of the newspaper, back when people would try to get they had an inexpensive car, so you used to have to buy it by the word. Matt, I don't know if you're old enough to remember that, but you have to buy a classified ad by the amount of words there.
Sadly, I'm old enough, yes.
Okay, so people would have something like, it'd be like 1967 Volkswagen runs and a phone number. Mm-hmm. And I would think, well, that's no way to sell something. And so the 13-year-old me would take my paper route money, and I'd convince my mom or dad to take me out there, and I'd buy this old Volkswagen for $300 or $400, drag it home, figure out how to make it run. And then my first business investment was a Polaroid camera. And I would take my little Polaroid camera and I would get a front 3/4 view with the wheel turned. And I would write my 50 words of ad copy in the old Auto Trader magazine. And I would take my $300 Volkswagen and I'd write some, verbose ad copy and get someone to pay me $2,500 for said car. And so I did that all through 13, 14, 15 years old, translated that into a job eventually at a Porsche dealer when I got my driver's license, and then bought my first 911, which was a 75. I think Magnus can identify with this story. Mine was not a great car. It was a base 911, which they didn't even have in the U.S. Mine was a rest of world, originally a German market, or derogatory at that time called a gray market car. So it was a 75 base 911 with rusty doors and broken head studs. And I bought that car for $6,500. And I'm not the world's best mechanic, but I was broke. And so I translated what I thought I knew about working on Volkswagens to working on Porsches. And of course, I had a job at a Porsche dealership. And so I got to do a little bit of time with some of the old guard there and learning how to work on the cars. And I've had Porsches in my life ever since. So that's kind of where I come from, I guess.
Nathan, I know that you sometimes focus on making sure everything is like period correct. And I guess with appraisals and valuations, that's part of it, right? So whereas I think of Magnus as an outlaw, I guess you would be like
the in-law.
The in-law.
Well, I was going to say the cops.
Everyone's got an inner outlaw. Let's put it that way.
How do you think of it, Nathan?
Actually, what's interesting is one of the things I actually somewhat hate is the fact with my title, a lot of people think that first and foremost, all I care about is the values of the cars. I'm an expert on the values, but I could care less about the values, as little sense as that makes. And the same thing with my content. I'll make a video showing what the cars once were because I want to give someone a reference standard. That's not to state that that's necessarily what I think they should own, nor do I necessarily think, or is that necessarily what's in my own garage? So if you come to my own garage, I do have some reference standard cars, but I also own many cars that are 100% built and used and driven to my taste, regardless of whether someone else wants that. So that's the hard part with making content around what's correct, is people assume I'm making a value judgment that they should have that. It's basically just telling what it once was as a reference.
That makes a lot of sense. So I think we've got some topics that we want to discuss. And Matt is the first one. We just want to ask each of you guys what your favorite Porsche is or what you think the best Porsche is if you're just going to have one. Matt, maybe you want to frame that slightly differently.
I agree.
Just give us, if there's one that you're going to have.
It's a V8 pickup truck.
I want to avoid, if we're sticking in the 911 realm, and I know that obviously I think Magnus, you had some Dodge muscle cars when you started getting into four wheels, and Nathan, I know you have I think you have like a 928 or maybe a few of those and other cars. I want to keep this inside 911, but otherwise I don't care. So, and I know that you probably will love all your children equally, but if you had a desert island 911, if you could pick, Nathan, we'll start with you, one generation if it was the only one you could have, is there a choice?
Absolutely there is. So, so no one gives me hate. I do have at least one of every generation of 911 built. With that said, if I could only have one, my primary love, I like the 1970 and 71 cars. Those were kind of my peak cars. In fact, I have a video out there called Driving Early 911s, I think, and there's a white, kind of a hot rod 71T in that video. I've owned that car for many, many years. If I could only have one car, that's the car that's staying in my garage.
What about you, Magnus?
Well, how big's the desert island? Where is it? Is it flat? Is it hilly? Can you get off it or are you stuck on it? I mean, there is no, for me, one car fits all. There is no best of. For me, it's like stepping back in time. We all know the 911 debuted in 1964. It's been around over 60 years. There's 8 generations of it. They all do the same thing differently. Ironically, the car that when I get asked this question, not so much what's the best, but which one am I keeping out of my garage, it's always car number 277, which ironically is a 1971 911T.
That's
which
very
has been
weird.
modified. So that is the keeper car, but that's not necessarily the most practical car or the best car.
But you both picked the same one.
And the same year.
Well,
yeah.
277 is a special car for me. I acquired that at the Pomona Swap Meet in 1999. So that car now is 55 years old. And by my math, I've owned it 27, almost 28 years. So I've owned it for over half its life. And that's the one I'm most sort of connected to. It's the favorite pair of old shoes, broken in jeans. It's got character, soul, patina, and everything that I love about vintage cars, not just vintage Porsches. But that's not the car Hannah and I drove from LA to Denver in a day and did that 1,050-mile journey through 5 states and, over the Rockies at 10,000 feet in snow the day after Christmas. The 71T just doesn't work in that environment. First of all, that car, there's no heat in it. The wipers don't work. The defrost doesn't work. So for me, it's a tough question because, like I say, it depends where the desert island is. So,
but what you're saying is the car that we drove was a 991.1. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, it's not what I'm trying to say. The daily driver for me, like today we drove a vintage Rolls Royce, and we drove the vintage Rolls Royce because the daily driver for me in the Porsche world is a 991.1 Turbo S that currently has 200,000 miles. It rolled over 200,000 miles a couple of months ago. I get in it today and this annoying, engine coolant light comes on. Engine running excessively hot.
We're in the car to
and
come
I go,
here.
I've only just started
and had
it
to
up.
Get out.
So, I do talk about the 991.1 Turbo S is the Swiss Army knife of 911s. But I'll tell you, and that is the car that I daily in. It's never parked in a garage. It's parked outside. I'm the second owner. I ramble on it about that car all the time. Rhodium silver metallic red interior, 2014 launch color. You couldn't get a more practical, badass Swiss Army knife 911 used car than that I bought for pennies on the dollar.
Only 2 pedals, though, dude.
Only 2 pedals, yeah. I mean, there's super annoying things with it. When I first got it, that was it. It's the only... I've probably owned 100 911s, not just Porsches. I own other Porsches, front engine, mid-engine, rear engine, air and water cooled. But yeah, 2 pedal. And I'm like, wow, I wasn't even looking for that car. I was looking for a 997 turbo. Because, I'd never owned one, and I've actually never owned a 997. But yeah, 2 pedal car, which I thought, I'm going to miss shifting gears, but I don't. But the other really annoying thing about that car is center lock wheels. Completely impractical. I've probably had at least 5 flats or punctures in the 3-4 years of ownership. It's hard to get those wheels off on the side of the road. It's hard to get them back on. No one has a correct torque wrench unless you go to the Porsche dealer. It's just a pain in the neck. It left me stranded in the middle of nowhere once. So
pretty, though. Those wheels are so pretty.
Nothing's perfect, and what I've realized is nothing needs to be perfect. That 991.1 Turbo S, like I say, it's never parked in a garage. It's parked outside. It's been dinged on the side of the road. I don't worry about it. I don't even lock it. I let Valley Parkers park it. It's the only car I'll let a Valley Parker get in and drive and park. Because for me, it's an appliance. It's a very, very efficient appliance. It's as quick as a GT3 on any spirited mountain road. If you're stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic doing a 10-mile-an-hour commute, it's practical. You don't have to worry about gears and stuff. Radio's on. Everything works in it. So it is the Swiss Army knife in 911s. But that's not the one that I'm really
right. It's tools for the job. I mean,
horses for courses.
I've asked you in the past, what you want if you could only have one, and you say like if it's 1,000 miles, I'll take that Turbo S. If it's 100, then any pre-1974. I have the evidence here. But yeah. I want to ask about the T spec. And Nathan, last episode that we did, we were talking about my car of the year. I love the new Carrera T because I think it's so perfect, but it's not basic. It's got, rear wheel steering, and it's the only one that comes with a stick that's not a GT car nowadays. What was the T spec back in, the 1971 year that you and Magnus both prize?
So in that era, Porsche basically had 3 trim levels for the car. The T was their entry-level car. The E was sort of the one in the middle, and the S was their highest performance model outside of the RS. Although it's kind of laughable now because, of course, by today's standards, all those cars are very, very simple. So I think in today's world, to me, why you want to buy a T is frankly, you're not paying the collector premium, particularly of an S. And for a car that you're going to use, drive, and like the T that I have is heavily modified. It was built the way I wanted a car to be. And when I started with a car, it wasn't a particularly valuable car to start with. And so I don't have a lot of concerns about the car. Like, I've driven that car across the US and back. I wouldn't necessarily do that in the same way with a 71S. So I think that's probably the big thing. It's a car I can use, much like Magnus talked about with his 991 Turbo S. It's a great appliance for a given use case.
But what is you both mentioned modifications. Magnus, yours is modified, and you, Nathan, called yours a hot rod, right? What do you do? Do you change out the torsion bars, put on shocks? Did you modify the engine? What are the modifications that people, or that you like to do, that other people like to do with these cars to make them more drivable today?
It comes down to use case, I think. I mean, that's what I look at. So I have 4 early cars in my collection, all of which have a different use case or genre. So I have a car that's, an all original, what's called 73.5 CIST. So it's a sort of a cruiser. I do have a car with a 2.8 liter twin plug MFI kind of mega motor that's real high strung and kind of like a kid with ADHD. And then I've got a car with a 2.7 RS spec motor. And then this driver I have has a fairly stock 3.2 liter, essentially for a 3.2 motor in it. And the reason I like that is it's plug and play. It's got Motronic fuel injection. So when I'm in the middle of Kansas, the car is not likely to suffer from bad fuel or elevation or anything like that. I can find parts at my local Napa. So it makes it a really easy car to live with, but doesn't necessarily have the character of like my higher revving MFI car would have or something. So,
Magnus, what about you?
Well, for me, the great thing about early Porsches is they are easy to modify. People have been modifying Porsches since James Dean in the 50s and, all the way through. So modifying Porsches is nothing new. When the T came out in 1970 as the entry level, as Nathan stated, it had a 2.2 liter motor with 130 horsepower. And the great thing about these cars is you can quite easily make them handle better, stop shorter, go faster. It's plug and play. There's 4 bolts that hold that motor and transmission in. And as Nathan said, he's got a 2.7, he's got a 2.8 twin plug, which is a great MFI motor, and he's got his 3.2. So, it's easy to modify these cars to your own aesthetic taste and use code, like Nathan said. For me, with my 71T, when I bought it at the Pomona Swap Meet, ironically, it had a 2.7 in it, but a CIS motor. And I just made it look like a 73 RS. It was pretty easy. Change the front and rear bumpers, put a ducktail on it, and get some RS flares welded on. And you got to remember, back in the 90s, you could pick these cars up all day long for $5,000, $6,000, under $10,000, $20,000 bought you a 3-liter turbo. It wasn't super duper valuable. At one time, I had 5 67Ss, for example. 67 was the first year the S motor came out, 2-liter, 160 horsepower. But back then, these were just old cars. I bought an S for $9,500. So, when the motor would get tired and someone would say, well, it's going to cost $5,000 in 6 months to rebuild that 2-liter 30 years ago, or I can put that 2.2T motor in the corner in for $1,500 and you can have it on the road in 2 weeks' time. These things were just another used car. They hadn't reached this iconic status like Lamborghinis and Ferraris and Astons and other European sports cars of that era. And I always used to say the great thing about Porsches is they were built to be driven. And that's what separated early 911s from other European cars of that vintage, i.e. Ferraris and Astons and Lambos. But that's also what kept Porsches affordable at this entry-level price point, which was relatable, where I bought a lot of cars for $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. You couldn't do that with Ferraris and stuff. But today, unfortunately, what I see is people don't want to devalue, quote-unquote, the 911s by putting mileage on them. It's more of my pet peeve flex at a Cars and Coffee with your super rare paint to sample deviated stitching. I don't want to devalue it. It's become this I guess, investment. When people say to me, hey, it's the first time Porsche owner syndrome, looking to buy a car, what's the best investment? I go, well, unless you're investing in smiles per mile and memorable moments, I cannot answer this question for you, because I've never bought a car as investment. I've been fortunate that I acquired things I wanted to experience before they became trendy, valuable, and doubled and tripled, and 20 grand turbos became 200 grand turbos. I'm not buying them today. But what I see today is things like STs, right? 992 STs that came out with a sticker price of, call it $290,000 2 years ago, and for some reason people are asking $600,000-$700,000 for these cars that aren't even rare, aren't even limited. I mean, has no reference to the original ST, which was a 70, 71, 72, never official model, sort of ordered from the Skunk Works parts bin of the Porsche Sports Purpose race streetable car. And
it's a completely different topic, actually.
Yeah,
because when I'm going through Bring a Trailer, I'm looking at everything that's like the air-cooled cars and the 997s and even some of the 991s, but I don't even bother. If it's a GT3 or an ST or a Dakar, I don't even look. I certainly don't click the star icon, because it's a different class of people. And
let's take a pause, and that can be our next topic.
Yeah,
let's break, because I'm getting the producer saying.
I was just getting started on the slippery slope with Porsche.
Put a pin in that, because I think actually Nathan probably will have some interesting insights too about how prices have changed, and I know our listeners want to hear about also the investment side of it. So let's go to a break, and then next up we'll talk about that. This is Hot Pursuit.
Nathan, I know you walk people, clients through all different levels of, budget. But I've noticed when I look across the spectrum of what's available, if I want a good driver that I don't need to instantly do, $20,000 or $30,000 worth of work on, the 997 is my best entry point. And as long as there's no IMS or bore scoring problems, at least as far as I've read on the internet, it seems like the 997.1 is the best deal. What do you think about that?
Ooh, best deal.
Let's say most affordable. Most affordable.
I would actually. I'm going to push back and go 996 if we're going to go most affordable.
Bingo. First water cooled.
Maybe the 997 might be a sweet spot. How about that?
Good point.
Why do you say that, Nathan? Tell us more about your thought.
Sweet spot.
Yeah.
Let's hit the sweet spot.
Yeah. So, a couple of things. I'm a big fan of the 996. I like early 996s. I believe Magnus had an Aero kit, early 996.
Yeah, it's got one.
I do as well. I really enjoy that car. And, I like the purity of that original design. I like the controversy around it. I like the fact that it feels a little bit more akin to my early experience, a little bit giving a finger to the Porsche purists, if you will. And since the 996 and 997 are built on the same platform, from a driving experience standpoint, they're going to deliver a very, very similar feel. So predominantly what you're getting with the 997 is a different aesthetic in terms of exterior and interior. And call me crazy, when the 997 debuted in 2005, I'll admit, I was a 993 owner at the time. I thought, Porsche got this right. And I was very, very excited about the car. Now in 2026, when I look back, I actually think the 996 is aging better. Correct. I think the design language of the 996 is actually more pure to the original 64 911. It's unadorned, it's slab-sided. Whereas the 997 is plays in my mind a little bit like when Volkswagen re-released the new Beetle in 98. Like, they were so desperate because
that is painful.
They're all Beetles to me, is what I joke about.
They drew inspiration from the past. So probably going to offend some 997 owners there. And I own a 997, so it's not that I'm a hater. I just I don't think they're worth the premium in the market versus a 996 for an entry-level buyer.
I just wouldn't be able to put up with a headlight. I cannot.
Yeah,
hold on.
I cannot. No, listen. There's so much plastic on the front of that car because
just cut the show now. Oh man,
the headlights are like the size of Texas. Each one. It's two Texases right on the hood, and there's too much.
Here you go. We all like fried eggs, right? Whether you take them over easy, you take them scrambled. I mean, the 996 was my first water-cooled 911. and I bought a 2004 996 GT3 10 years ago in 2016. I was late to the water-cooled party. I didn't really care too much about being in the GT3 owners club, but this kind of fell into my lap. It was close to my buddy's shop works up in San Jose, and that was when I joked about my garage got its first water leak. There was a leak in the roof and water came into the garage, and it came in a format of a 996.2 GT3, which to me is a special car. And if you really want a really, really special GT3, it's a 996.2 GT3 RS or a 996.1 GT3, which unfortunately the US market never got. And probably 5 years ago, I was chasing a .1 GT3 in Europe where they were super affordable.
Canada.
I don't even
need through Canada.
I was trying to sneak one in through, South America and bringing it in through the DR. And I really, really, really wanted a .1 because for me, I like the beginning of everything. Like I owned a 64 911. I had to have it. It was the birth of 911. I had to have a 75 turbo, which Porsche only made 284 of them. I ended up with 2 of them, left-hand drive, right-hand drive. So I like the beginning of every generation. And without a question of a doubt, I'm so bored to death with people talking about fried egg lights and bore scoring and IMS bearings, and I don't care about any of that stuff. When you're driving at 996, you don't see the headlights, first of all.
By the way, can I just say that's one of my problems with it, because I want to have that gun rail fender. Yeah. I want to be able to see the 2 wings at the end of the hood. And if I'm not mistaken, the 996 was the first time you no longer could, although I don't like how the 993 makes them a little bit too. I want them to be proud, Well, it's interesting because I own a Gen 1 and Gen 2. That was how I ended up in that Aero kit car, was I couldn't find a Gen 1 GT3. So I ended up with an Aero kit car, C2, and then a GT2 and a GT3. And when you park Gen 1, Gen 2 next to each other and just look at the headlights, Gen 1 headlights now 25 plus years later look better than Gen 2 headlights. And no one ever mentions that headlight when it's on a GT1, right? The holy grail car. No one ever talks about the ugly headlight from a 996 if it's on a GT1. So for me, the 996 still is affordable entry level.
Well, that was my question.
5 years ago.
Are they affordable, actually?
Yeah, they're obtainable. Yes, they are.
What price are we talking?
Well, Nathan's right here. I think 30 grand gets you into...
You can get one for 30 grand?
You get one in the 20s.
What do you think, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, probably for a coupe, you're going to want a budget, on the low side, 30. I mean, you can get them cheap. 40 is going to get you an amazing car, 25 edgy. So if it starts with a 3, it's probably a decent car in a coupe format.
I can't deal with the hazing, the hazing of the headlights that are that old, because there's so much plastic. I get
you're worrying about the wrong thing here. What you really needed to get was a 996 turbo 5 years ago when these were in the 30s. That was the deal. Nobody seemed to realize.
I remember Ted Gushu got one. But I still won't drive it, even if Ted does. Even if he has it shipped to Gstaad or wherever he lives.
996 Turbo to me is the car. I mean, I've got the GT2 version, 2-wheel drive.
I also don't need any GTs. I just need a Carrera S, frankly.
Well, that's all you need.
I always like the end of something, because that means the engineers have worked every single quirk and kink out of it. So that's why I feel like the 997.2 is probably the best, affordable car out there for someone like me who doesn't want to spend $100,000. I could get one still for, Nathan, correct me if I'm wrong, 80s or 90s, plus it's got the 9A1 motor, so it's going to last forever. And even if Magnus doesn't care about bore scoring and doing IMS work, I don't want to drop that money at demand here in New Jersey, even if I could have my engine bored out to 4 liters.
You'll be driving your pickup truck and your Harley anyway, so it won't matter.
What do you think about that whole? What do you think about the whole issue with the mechanical problems, Nathan?
I think the reality is if mechanical concern, I always tell people, what's your tolerance for risk, and that's one of the leading questions I'll give someone, because their tolerance of risk will guide where I direct them. And so someone who has a 0 or a near 0 tolerance for risk, I just advise them this is not the brand for them. If you're a 0 tolerance for risk person, they make something called a Toyota, a fabulous product, right? doesn't have the passion of Porsche, but it has zero risk profile. And so every Porsche you buy is going to have some risk, some generations more so than others. But I think it's a little bit foolish when people say, well, I'm going to buy, for example, a 997.2 because I have low tolerance for risk. And I say, well, first off, don't let anybody tell you otherwise. 981 motors can bore score, so throw that out the window. Yes, they don't have IMS failure, but certainly they have other things that crop up. And at the end of the day, the newest 997 second generation is now a 15-year-old European car. So let's not kid ourselves that it's going to be a low risk proposition. So whichever car you enter into, drive, love, and experience it. And part of the experience is one day it's going to piss you off and cost you money.
I mean, I got to push back against that a little bit because I had my 991 for 10 years and it has never had any kind of mechanical problem. Like, the only thing I've ever had it in the shop for is oil changes and the tires, and it just has been the most unbreakable vehicle I've ever owned, including Ford trucks and Mercedes Benz. I mean, I've had issues with everything else except for the 911. Maybe I just got lucky, but it seems to me that they're so well made that it differentiates at least the new cars from I have never had a Toyota, but from other American and European cars.
Yeah, but you got to realize, okay, what year is your 991?
2013.
Okay, so if you've had it for 10 years, you've had it since it was 2 years old. So the risk profile on a 2 to 10-year-old car is very different than it is on a 15 to 25-year-old car. So things fail even on a well-engineered product just for time, if nothing else, right?
Fair. I also I gravitate towards the M97 motor anyway because, and I don't know this because I haven't driven them back to back, but I hear, and it makes me want it more. I hear that it's more like mechanically pure, that the intake sound is better. And what do you think about that idea? Like, if you were going to pick between one generation or the other, and you had a high risk tolerance, and you didn't mind doing any of the work you needed to do, which would you choose?
Magnus? What?
He's never had a 997, which is weird, by the way.
Let me ask, why is that?
Why is that,
Why is
Magnus?
that?
Well, that was when I was looking for the 997 when I stumbled into the 991 Turbo S.
Oh.
It was just for me, I haven't lusted after a 997, unless I just haven't lusted after them. I've never owned a new car. It's not something that's really high up on my wish list. It was ticking a box of owning one of every generation. I don't have to own them to experience them. That's what I call OPP, other people's Porsches, where you get to drive them without necessarily owning them. But if it was a choice between a 996 and a 997, to me, I'm taking the 996 just because it's the beginning of the water-cooled era of Porsche 911s. It's more historical, it's more character, it's more soul, it's definitive. The 997 just came after. It's the next one. It's the follow-up. It's not as unique. It's not going to go down in history. I don't care about these things that you're talking about. It's irrelevant to me because it's not the only car that I have. 997s don't seem special. 996s, fried eggs all day long, IMS bearings, bring it on. It's unique. It defined the modern era of Porsche. I'm not a 993 fan. It's the last era of air-cooled. I own one. In me, I call the 993 in stock form, not that it needs to be stock, but it's the Cadillac of 911s. It's lazy.
He doesn't mean that as a compliment,
soft.
by the way.
Yeah.
It's
like the Cadillac of minivans in Get Shorty when, Travolta says to DeVito when they pull up the restaurant and he's in the minivan and he goes, it's the Cadillac of minivans. So, to me, the 993, to some purists, it's the last of the air-cooled. I don't care. Same with the 996. It was like 20 years ago, nobody cared about 996s.
I will say, Hannah, you know what I'm going to say. Frank Stephen Walliser,
yes,
who
this
has
was a glory
developed
moment
all of
for
those
you.
GT cars you love so much.
This is the current head of Bentley for anybody listening.
I asked him what he thought about me getting a 964 because I did, and I still kind of think. Well, I don't know. I think that. I don't think
that would be wrong.
Might be a good.
What
choice.
did Frank say, Dr. Walliser?
He essentially said, and I'm paraphrasing, so don't yell at me for misquoting, but he essentially said. all of those other air-cooled Porsches are like trash. Only the 993 is what you want because it handles like a real sports car.
Just to be clear, he didn't say the word trash.
No, he didn't at all. But I mean, his point was he has no need for torsion bars, and he likes that multi-link rear suspension. Nathan, let me get your take on the 993.
Yeah, so I have a 993. I actually have a video out. You can find it online. It's me, my speed yellow 993 next to my speed yellow .1 996 Aero Kit car. I recommend watching that. It got a lot of flack, and I basically lay out in that video that I probably drive my 996 20 times for every time I drive my 993. I think the 993 is a beautiful car. It's a seminal work for Porsche. I used to love it more than I love it now. My issue with it is I call it 5 degrees right of center. It's actually too good to be an air-cooled 911 and not good enough to be a water-cooled 911. And so if I could only have one, it might be a good choice for someone. But I just find that when the mood strikes to drive a classic Porsche, I'm going to grab one of my 964s or one of my early cars. And if I want a little bit more capability but still raw, I'm going to drive my 996. And so I just rarely choose the 993. The build quality is much better than my 996. It's a much more valuable car. But just which one I feel better getting out of? 996. I hate to say it.
All right. That's a good place to take a break here. I want to come back and talk about the valuation of these vehicles. I think
then and now.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, then they were affordable and you won't believe it. Now you can't afford one. So,
and you also won't believe how expensive.
Exactly.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. We'll be right back with Nathan Merz and Magnus Walker. This is Hot Pursuit.
Welcome back. This has been, I feel like it's been enlightening, but I also don't know if we're convincing Matt. I feel like all of us are trying to convince you, Matt.
You can lead a horse to water.
Yeah, but you can't make him drink. But let's talk about the values here for a second, because one of your big criteria, Matt, is something that you can afford, which for Porsche used to be a big part of the appeal, but that has really changed. I'm curious, Nathan, specifically, where do you see any opportunities to come into the Porsche family for something affordable that might gain value? I mean, does that even exist anymore?
That's a tough question, particularly because we decided this topic was going to be exclusive to the 911. So oftentimes I make recommendations outside the 911 family. Yeah. But if we're going to stick to the 911 family or topic, I certainly think that there's cars that are going to still have opportunity to gain value. And I think there are actually cars, that are newly of value because of market demographic shift. And so I still believe in my heart that 996 cars are a good value. I think that particularly like 996 Turbo, 996 GT3, even though they're not affordable per se, they're still within a reasonable number value for enthusiasts who's committed to the cause.
What about the older cars, Nathan? Yeah. I mean, like, my problem is if I look at a 996 right now is that, or I look at a 997 and I can, like you say, 30 grand, 40 grand for the 996. I'm looking at coupes, right? 997, you can get a great one for 50 or 60. But if I look at, I say, okay, I want a Carrera 3.2 with a G50, or I want a 964. And in that case, I'd be willing to take a Cabriolet because I feel like it's stiff enough already.
We should talk about that also.
But those are only, those are already 100,000. Like if you want to have a nice driver example, or am I wrong?
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. And that's actually one of the challenges I tell people. Like Magnus, I'm not a wealthy guy. People say, oh my gosh, I have all these cars. And I said, no, I bought them when they were inexpensive. Or if I bought them recently, I have, Magnus and I use the same accounting method in our brain, which is, well, I may have paid this for the car today, but I sold a car I only paid 20 grand for. So essentially I paid 20 grand. I know that's bad math, but that's how my brain works. Whereas a lot of my cars today, I wouldn't go out and rebuy that car for its current market value. And that's how I feel, for example, like a decent quality G50 3.2 coupe, if you call that $100K, in my heart, do I think that car delivers $100,000 worth of joy and ownership experience? No. It kills me to say it, but I don't think so.
I mean, for that scenario, here's what I would do. You got $100,000 to spend, and I'm going to be the Mustang that doesn't follow the rules here, because I know we're talking about 911. I mean, go buy a 968, go buy a 928. You know, there's plenty of value there outside of the 911 world. I mean, for me, I've actually never owned a 3.2 Carrera. It's another G-bodied car that I've never owned. You know, I've driven a lot of G-body cars. We know G-body cars came out in 74 and they went all the way up to 89 when the 964 replaced it. For me, the sweet spot really is a 3-liter SC over a 3.2 Carrera. And I also don't buy into this 3.2 Carrera's got to have a G50 transmission. I really, really like the 915.
This is what my brother says, too. Have I mentioned my brother-in-law?
Oh,
he likes it. He likes it when I do.
He sounds like the smart one, I think. These people are getting hung up on G53.2s that are same people that are worried about IMS.
No, you're right. He has 19. I think it's a 1982 3-liter SC.
Last year.
Yeah, and he loves it.
Luis, right? We're talking about Luis.
We're
on some text threads.
Luisito.
Yes. Hello.
He's a smart one. To me, the 3-liter SC, which debuted in 78, you know, it's the same case as a 3-liter turbo. You know, they just seem more throttle responsive. They seem a little snappier. You know, I'm just more a little rawer. You know, but these are the cars that were affordable that were, you know, I guess it's irrelevant to say they were all affordable back then, but it comes back to this, does a 3.2 Carrera with
it's
a
irrelevant
G50
and painful
represent
when you say
$100,000 worth of value? No, not from a driving experience at all.
I have to say a 928 or a 968 or whatever, to me that doesn't work because I want the engine to be behind me. And I know, Nathan, I've seen some videos where you say, like, look at a Cayman or a Boxster, which makes more sense to me because then you have the mid-engine feel and it makes sense. But I still want to be able to put my kids in the back. So that's just also like my only option really is a 911. I think I would prefer to go with something that I'm not going to have to work on too much. That I know it's an old car, but I feel like mechanical simplicity is probably a really important part of the decision. And I guess in that case, the older G-body cars make more sense than maybe a 964, right?
I mean, to me, they represent a better value. I'm with Magnus. I'm a 915 fan. So my only pivot, and I own SCs as well. I've got a video you can watch about the SC, but I like the 84 to 86 3.2 because what they do offer is they're still 915, they're a little bit lighter. They sell at a discount versus the G50 cars, but you get the Motronic motor, which Magnus is blessed. He's in LA. I'm blessed. I'm in Seattle. We have great independent Porsche support, but for large swaths of the country, they don't have great support. And so CIS is a really good, robust fuel injection system, but it's mechanical. And so you still have to have, you know, an old guy with knurled hands and probably has a German accent to work on it.
We should talk about convertibles for a second because Matt, I feel like
because
sometimes Matt he'll like send me pictures of, you know, Speedster America type 911s. And I know there's something in you that really wants a convertible, Matt. Well, but I also know that, like, let's hear about the value proposition of a convertible versus a coupe, and why Magnus hates convertibles.
Just get a soft window Targa. That's a real flex. 67 soft window Targa 912.
And does that even work in Seattle? With all that rain?
Magnus always tells me. Magnus obviously ridicules convertibles, and my brother also says no, get a coupe, and I know that would be
we got to get your brother on the podcast.
A purist, I know that would be a purist idea, but you know what, the Porsche in my neighborhood when I was growing up, there was a doctor who had a convertible Carrera 3.2 with the whale tail. I don't necessarily need that part, but I
wouldn't be wrong.
You know, it's a Mystic Pizza pie.
It's in my head. And also, like, I would be using this car as a weekend car, right? Driving it around with the kids in the back for ice cream. Like, the top down is fun, and they're more affordable, right, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, the Cabriolet. I mean, essentially because people, a little bit like Magnus and I, we shun the convertible as an impure expression of the form, which is not really fair. It's still a wonderful car. And as a result, the values are absolutely, I mean, it depends on the generation, but for example, in a 3.2 generation, the cabriolets sell for literally half the price of a similar quality coupe. So it is a little bit compelling. And even me, who, although I will tell you, Matt, like even me, like I own these cars every so often, I'll get the hankering. I'll think, I'll go, off the plotted chart. And then I drive one and I think it's a good car. It just isn't the car.
I'm seeing Matt Miller in a like 86 red slant nose convertible.
Yes.
Taking the kids to get ice cream.
This is your best life.
Yeah, red slant nose 930 convertible.
No slant nose for me. Remember, I need those gun rails, dude. That's why I like the America Roadster. To me, that would be really great.
America Roadster.
I just like it because it's got the wider rear end and you can put the top down, and it's a 964, so it's got the
bad boys.
The springs.
Very
up
bad
front.
boys.
Nathan, I wanted to ask about Columbia Valley Luxury Cars, and this is your dealership, right? Your shop, and because I wonder how you would recommend somebody, and maybe not specifically about your shop, but how would you recommend to somebody to go about finding and buying a 911? Like, should I be on Bring a Trailer all day? Should I go on Car Gurus? Should I find someone like you? Because I don't know how much inventory you have. It seems to me like you walk people through it. You find them a car, and then
and also, who do you know how do you know who to trust?
Yeah.
I think it's good because there are a lot of shady people out there.
Well, those are $1 million questions, and I try to help people with this all the time to the best of my ability. I do have a consulting model, so people could call in and buy my time and help me. I'll help them walk them through the market. But yeah, unfortunately, the market is very frustrating. It used to be, it was just sort of you knew people and it was an enthusiast network, and you bought cars because you both shared the love and the passion, and cars really didn't have significant value. So it was just fun and easy. And now, because the cars are sort of a hot commodity in the car market, and even take Bring a Trailer as an example, something like 30% of their cars on that platform are Porsche. Well, clearly Porsche isn't 30% of the collector car market, but you would think it is. It just happens to be the hottest zip code in the Porsche or in the car real estate right now. And so when that happens, you get a lot of, so-called experts, whether they want to be influencers or whether they're trying to sell you something, trying to tell people what they should or shouldn't do or which cars are good. And I always tell people, first and foremost, buy what you love. It's an extravagance. No matter what you spend, it's an extravagance to have a car that's not as functional as a modern car. So when you walk out to your garage or to your car, you should have a little tickle like you're 10 years old and it's Christmas morning. If you don't have that sense, you probably bought the wrong car. I think you should also, go into it with the thought of what your use case is going to be. And everyone's use case is different. And I don't judge. There's a lot of judgment in the Porsche world. Some people love to race their cars. Some people like to work on their cars. Some people like to show their cars. Some of them like to never use them and just have them in their garage. And all those use cases are just fine with me, but understand what your use case is going to be. So in your case, you have this vision, I want to take my kids out of my car. That's a different use case than, I don't have kids at home anymore, so that's not my use case. And so there's that. In terms of who to trust, very, very few people, in this world, sadly. It kind of kills me to say that. But I also think in some ways it's somewhat unfair. I've actually recently had to go to a disclaimer on Bring a Trailer where I basically tell people, hey, yes, I'm well known in the Porsche space. Yes, I operate from a place of integrity, but I'm still selling a 40-year-old or 20-year-old or whatever German car that is going to break, is going to, like Magnus was saying, he's got a flat tire somewhere and the car's got to be flatbedded. That's kind of part of the experience. And so it's a long-winded answer, and I don't know if I gave you good information.
No, you did.
It's very sensible, honestly.
I mean,
very
look, there's
sensible.
just no easy answer. I didn't expect you to say like, oh, go to P-Car Market and then you'll be fine, Or I guess, obviously, if I'm willing to pay for your time, you're going to help me to the best of your ability. Or I mean, Magnus, what do you do? It seems like you just have cars fall into your lap all the time.
I'm the complete opposite. I'm the guy that's owned a lot of vehicles. I take a leap of faith. How bad can it be? I've only once ever did I get a PPI done on a car. That happened to be a 1975 right-hand drive 930 turbo that was in Australia. So, that one kind of seemed like, it's on the other side of the world. Maybe I should have someone look at it before I blindly just say, yeah, I'll buy it. Because generally that's how I jump into things. It's a very emotional connection that starts with the thrill of the chase. That's it. It's raw emotion. It's waking up at 3 a.m, just obsessing over it, have to have it. And then once I've decided, it's then, work the deal. And then as quickly as I can get the seller paid before he changes his mind with seller remorse, I'm wiring him the money that same day. And, it's a lesson in patience.
Time kills the deal.
I've acquired a lot of rare cars. The 64 911 was a deal I put together over 9 months. Porsche only made 232 of those. So I take a leap of faith. I just dive in. I don't ask anyone's opinions. I don't spend any time on the internet looking at videos. I've kind of stopped making my own videos. It's irrelevant to me. I don't need no distraction, no one else's negative frequency or opinion. It's irrelevant. And I've always been that way. If it makes my heart sort of miss a beat and I'm that 10-year-old kid that wrote the letter to Porsche and this is a familiar story, Porsche's always making this same promotional video with the 10-year-old kid who's at school and watches the 911 go by and gets on his bicycle and goes down to the dealership and meets the dealer and the dealer gives him a business card and I'll be back in 20 years scenario. Porsche's been making that commercial for a long, long time. Because it's reality. These dreams start at an early age. Everyone falls in love with a car at an early age. So for me, it's purely emotional.
Well,
I'm not looking at spreadsheets and getting opinions and figuring stuff out.
But you also do your research. Obviously, you're not.
I used to. I don't think I do anymore.
Well, because you now have life experience. It's like what you're talking about.
I did zero research when I bought the 991 Turbo S.
Don't say
zero.
That.
It wasn't even on my radar. It wasn't even something I wanted. The cars are big and bulky and, you park an early car next to it. And it was just, maybe I'm getting old and senile, but,
I think that could be the case, dude.
Yeah, I'm pushing 60. I'm okay with it.
I have to say, I have spreadsheets and I've got like 2 different ChatGPT accounts that I'm constantly talking to. You're very analytical.
I'm the complete
I've seen all of your videos, Magnus, and I'm watching all of Nathan's now. So I still do. For me, watching the videos is a part of the whole experience. Like that's part of what I want to be doing. I want to be spending an hour a day on Bring a Trailer,
that's part of the fun.
Double checking P-Car Market and looking at Elfer Spot and all this stuff. But listen, I really appreciate your time, and I probably will just call up Columbia Valley Luxury Cars and have them help me out because
why don't you go buy one and drive it down to LA?
Just go buy a 996. Go buy a 996 and be done with it because all of these talking about it. You could be driving it this weekend.
All right. Well, I will try and I will try and do it soon, and I'll do it with you guys because you're people that I actually do.
Let me just say before we wrap, and I know we're going to wrap, but we're telling you to buy a 996, but we're also all telling you don't listen to anybody else.
Yeah,
that's
and
right.
everyone,
I'm definitely not going to buy a 996.
Both Nathan and Magnus have said don't listen to anyone. Don't even listen to us.
Yeah, don't listen to us.
It's got to make you happy.
I think if I'm going to spend $100,000, because I really do want to see those gun rails, I really do want like the original body shape. I'm going to have to do it with someone like Nathan, who I feel like I can trust.
We can trust him.
Or hopefully one falls into Magnus's lap and he passes it on to me. But dude, I really appreciate your time, Nathan. Thank you so much for joining us. Magnus, you as well, and Hannah. It's always lovely to spend the time with you.
It's been emotional.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I just want to give a shout out to Dennis because he actually messaged me last night and was saying he listened to the podcast on his drive home, and he wrote in earlier about his 997.2 manual C4S purchased last year. It's his forever car.
Oh, he loves it.
Yeah, and
that's cool.
he linked to one of Nathan's videos So I was like,
even better.
Oh, cool. This is
small.
like
Wow, small world. You got that
coincidence?
last night?
serendipity.
Wow.
Yeah.
Totally the universe.
We don't, I guess we could wrap this up completely, but
Yes.
you're in Vegas and you're headed back.
Yeah.
And do you have anything cool coming up?
So I left Vegas last night, actually. I was this is my first CES ever, which was
How
really,
hellish was it?
It wasn't as bad as everyone said.
Much
Honestly,
did it
was
suck?
it honestly, because it was shiny and new, it was not bad. I really just focused on car stuff. I know you can walk the floor and see endless robots for everything, but honestly,
VTOLs.
it wasn't that bad.
What is a VTOL? Vertical takeoff
Oh.
and landing.
Yeah. I don't. Okay, so there's that. I also learned a new term, FUD. Do you know what FUD means?
That's a Trumpy thing, right?
I don't know if it's Trumpy. Someone in a meeting I was in kept saying it, so I had to look it up.
It
means
fear.
uncertainty and doubt. Anyway, it was really interesting. And coming up, let's see. Oh, you know what? Next week I'm going to be in New York.
Sweet.
Yeah, so I'll see you live and in person. We have our annual edit meeting where we plan on as much
I'm
as
excited.
we can. So,
You know
yeah.
that I'll be here most of the week, but I'm going to Motor City on Thursday.
Oh, Detroit. Oh,
Yes.
Ooh, for Ford.
I'm going to hang out with Jim
Yes.
Farley from
Oh, that's
Ford.
great. That's really great.
And I'm going to hang out with Max Verstappen from
No.
Red Bull. Yes, I will
Is
be
this a
interviewing.
big Ford F1 announcement?
Yes, I will be interviewing those dudes. But you know what I'm most excited about? Most of all,
What?
Dax Shepard is going to be there.
Oh,
Magnus, have you seen Hit and Run? Have you seen the movie Hit and Run?
No, we've got to put it on the list, I think.
Dude,
fella.
it is such a good movie. Dax wrote and directed it. Kristen Bell stars in it with him. And it's a car dude and dudette movie. Like, he has his old Lincoln Continental, which is actually his. He has a Cadillac CTS-V wagon with a stick that Bradley Cooper drives. Bradley Cooper and Out Dreadlocks.
This is the clip you sent me.
I sent you a clip from it.
Yeah.
There's a Corvette in it. There's like a Pontiac Solstice.
This is what we're watching tonight.
It's so good. So good. I highly recommend it. So I'm hoping that I can convince Dax Shepard to join us on this podcast.
Please do.
Yeah.
That does it for this week's show. Remember to follow and subscribe to the Hot Pursuit podcast on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen. You can also send us your comments, and we do read them and really appreciate the comments and the pictures and the links to things you've seen. Also, shout out to my sister who sent us a link with some very cool vintage car clothing. Email us at hotpursuit@bloomberg.net.
Check out Hannah's columns as well and stories on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg Business app. Go there for car reviews, events, and stories that you won't find anywhere else. Find it at Bloomberg.com/pursuits/autos. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott. We'll be back in your podcast feed again next week.